Some of you may have met me before. I've done a few of these webinars, some with Anna, some with other members of the Otto team. My name's George. I'm one of the original founders of Otto, but I mainly do the sort of technical and the product development side of stuff now. So this evening, we're going to be talking about habituation. And that's the kind of theme. And when we sent out the invite for this, we also got a few questions in. So I'm going to do my best to get stuck in there as well and answer any questions I have. I will start by just giving you a little bit of a background about myself so you know who's talking to you. I'll tell you a little bit about Otto and what we do and the kind of service we provide and what we try to offer. We'll have a bit of discussion about habituation as a concept and what it is and how we might be able to help you achieve it. And then we'll open the floor to the Q&A. I can see a few of you have already found the Q&A option at the bottom. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a button that says Q&A. You should be able to tap on that and submit a question. So feel free to just ask a question at any point during this evening. If there's anything I say that you don't understand, then feel free to just drop a question there. There's not a problem at all. And I'll try and get around to it in due course. So chat is disabled, yes. As you can tell, oh, here we are. Attendees can chat with, there we go. I should have just unlocked chat. So Davina just asked, is chat disabled? Well, now it's open to everybody. So I'm going to type a message. Hello. Fine. So if you've got any comments or anything along the way, then please feel free to drop in there. Brilliant. There we go. My name's George. I'm a doctor by background. I graduated in 2010. I can't even remember when I graduated. Was it 2010? That seems too long ago. Well, I graduated around 2010, that's for sure. I went to Holyoke Medical School, and I was a military scholar as well. So as soon as I graduated, I was commissioned into the Royal Navy, and I worked at an air station in Somerset, which is one of the counties in the southwest of England, for anybody who's not local to the UK. It was as I was applying to the military that I got tinnitus myself. Not a particularly interesting story. I just listened to my music too loud when I was a kid doing my paper round. And then as I grew up, and while I was a student, I used to spend too much time in bars and clubs and busy restaurants and so on, standing near speakers. And then there was essentially one fateful evening where I went to a club with some friends, actually one of the co-founders of Otto, my best friend, Ed. And I stood far too close to a speaker. Now I'd left bars and clubs and stuff before and had tinnitus. And in fact, I can even remember being a kid at my school discos when I can't have been older than 10 or 11 and leaving and experiencing tinnitus then. And I thought that was probably just going to be another one of those instances. And it wasn't. I woke up the next morning and the ringing was still there. And I thought, oh, that's odd. I guess I got back late and I woke up early. It's just, taking its time to wind down. But actually, the next day and the next day carried on and the ringing was still there. And it was quite pervasive and quite loud. And so I entered a spiral that I suspect many of you have been on or are currently in at the moment. And that is a spiral of worry and stress and just kind of general, I don't know what the best word is. I mean, it's a real maelstrom of feelings, right? And emotions when you realize that you have tinnitus. Most people know what tinnitus is kind of out the bat. I certainly did because I was already sort of training to be a doctor. And that kind of realization slowly dawning on me that it was going to be there for life really did play havoc with me and my mental health and just my kind of general life for quite a long time. And I suppose it took me about 18 months to 2 years to habituate. And again, I'll come on to habituation a little bit later. I don't normally talk about myself this long, by the way, but I think it's my story and my experience with habituating is, I guess, relevant to the theme of what we're doing. So sorry if this all sounds a little bit self-indulgent. So I did habituate. It took me a long time. It took me 18 months, 2 years, like I said, and it was a slow process, and it was a difficult process. I certainly didn't have any help doing it. I didn't seek any help because I was applying to the military and I was scared that they'd find out I had tinnitus, right? So I hadn't done my joining medical yet. And I thought if these guys find out that I have tinnitus, then they're not going to let me in. So not only am I going to be stuck with this ringing in my ears for my life, but it's going to have sabotaged this career that I've dreamed of ever since I was a kid. Before it's even started, it really, really distressing. But I did get there in the end, and we'll talk about how and how it could have been a bit better later. But then I started working in the military, and of course, I'm working at an air station with a lot of young men and women that are exposing themselves to loud noises every day, right? So my patients were people that were working on helicopters or in louder engine rooms, or maybe the infantry and the Royal Marines working with weaponry and explosives and so on. And so it wasn't uncommon for people to come in or for me to have patients with tinnitus. And generally speaking, those consultations were fairly unsatisfying. I knew, because when you're a doctor, you have a list of your patients that you're going to see that morning, and there's normally a one-liner attached to that patient. So it will say, this person is coming in with back pain or tiredness, or they need a medical form signing. And whenever I saw a patient where it was tinnitus, that was it. It was, you just kind of knew. You call them a heart sink, and you just think, there's not much I'm going to be able to do for this person. And there's almost a weird dynamic that happens whereby you sort of hope that you can find something wrong with them, because then you can refer them on to an ENT surgeon, right, who might be able to fix whatever complicated thing in the head and neck, or something might be going on. But the reality is that the vast majority of the time, and the vast majority of people, it's chronic tinnitus. There is no obvious cause, and certainly no obvious cure. And so they were deeply unsatisfying. And so what I did was I set about trying to find out what I was supposed to be doing for these people, right? So we're taught in medical school how to look after these patients, but that was a few years ago. And by the letter of the kind of doctor's rule book, exactly what is it that I'm supposed to be doing for these patients? How should a doctor help somebody with tinnitus? And really, once you're past what we call the red flag checks, and those are just making sure that that person is safe. So there are some causes of tinnitus that are concerning, and we need to make sure that those people have had those things ruled out by ENT surgeons and so on. Excuse me. So once you've made sure someone's safe, actually the most effective thing you can do for somebody, the most beneficial way that you can improve their quality of life, is get them psychological help. So to CBT, psychologist intervention, therapy, that sort of thing, to help people habituate, right? And to get to the stage I'm at now. But nobody was doing it. And actually, for me and my patients, there was one tinnitus therapist who was about 150 miles up the road. And the waiting time in the Defense Audiology Service, which is how I would have to refer these people, was like 6 to 9 months. And if we wanted to get them help privately, it was extremely expensive, and there were still waits. And the quality of the services we could find just weren't that great. So we started Otto. And it wasn't so long after that realization that me and my friend Ed, who was also in the military as a doctor as well, we left and we started Otto. And really the whole mission behind Otto is making that psychological care, the stuff we know is proven to help people with tinnitus, proven to help people habituate, to make it accessible, right? To make sure that if you want help habituating, you can get started tomorrow, you can get started tonight. And if you really want that one-on-one therapy with a psychologist, that you can get it. And like I said, you can get it at very short notice. So I'll talk a little bit more about kind of Otto and what we provide and how it works a little bit later. We do have a discount code as well for anybody that wants to sign up at the end of this. Well, we'll be emailing you after this webinar, so there'll be plenty of stuff there to go over. So So I guess the next thing to discuss then is habituation, and how did I get there? How do we help people like you get there? And what exactly is it? Now, habituation has it's a little bit of a loose term. We've adopted it at Otto because we feel it really represents what we're trying to do, like our mission with all of the people that sign up and get involved with Otto. That's the end stage that we're trying to get people to, is habituation. That's what resonated with us as a team. And we define it internally. So this isn't necessarily how we like to push it out into the public, but internally at Otto, we say habituation is the lack of a negative emotional response to the perception of your tinnitus. So that's obviously a bit wordy and a bit complicated, and that's why we don't normally use that definition externally. But I'm going to break it down for you a little bit now. So the lack of a negative emotional response, well, you guys are going to know that just as well as I do, the sort of negative emotional reactions that tinnitus can provoke. The most common stuff that I experienced and that we see now at Otto are things like anxiety, difficulty sleeping, anger, guilt. I mean, guilt's a big one that I felt, irritated that I just hadn't looked after my ears. I was 20, my early 20s, 20, 21, and it was my fault. It was my fault. I knew that I shouldn't have been listening to music that loud. I knew I should have been wearing ear protection when I went out, but I just had this young, stupid attitude to my own ear health, and now I was paying the price. And so there was a huge amount of guilt, and that's something that's fairly common with tinnitus. On the other side, there are people that get tinnitus through absolutely no fault of their own, because they've been exposed to a loud noise or a medication or something else that's given them tinnitus. And that can be extremely frustrating and make people very angry and upset. And again, that's an emotion that's triggered every time you perceive your tinnitus or you have your tinnitus. That's a really difficult place to be. There's also a lot of frustration, not just at maybe the cause of the tinnitus, but also the medical community at large, right? I just glanced and seen there's a comment there about being told by an ENT surgeon or an audiologist or so on that you're often told that there's nothing that can be done, right? That there's no cure, you just need to go and get used to it. That's not a nice thing to hear. It's not true, for one thing. There's plenty of stuff that can be done. We're evidence of that. It's exactly what we provide. But it is frustrating to hear, and it does make people angry. And again, that's something that can resurface every single time. So I won't go into every single one of them. I mean, there's basically every spectrum of bad emotions can be experienced when you perceive your tinnitus. And really, habituation is that you don't experience any of those anytime you perceive your tinnitus. Now, the important thing to realize here, and you really need to understand this, because we can't promise you otherwise, and that is that habituation is independent of whether or not you still perceive your tinnitus. It doesn't matter, right, to somebody who's habituated whether they notice their tinnitus or not. Now, again, I would consider myself habituated. If I want to take a step back now and stop talking, I can hear my tinnitus, I can listen to it, I can feel it, I can be aware, I can perceive it, but I don't have a negative emotional reaction to it. So it's just super important that you guys understand that habituation is about making the tinnitus disappear. It's about not having that negative emotional reaction. Now, that might sound a bit disappointing to some people, because clearly we all just want a cure, right? We want to be able to take that tablet or that medication or whatever it might be and have it gone. But I'm really here to tell you guys that it's as good as that. There is essentially no big difference between being habituated and not having the tinnitus. And the way I like to illustrate that is that my life before I had tinnitus, the things I would worry about were relationships, were my career, were was I popular at university and at school, financial stuff, and so on and so forth. So those are the things that I worried about before I had tinnitus. Now, when I got tinnitus, everything I cared about and everything, my whole life, all my stresses, all my anxieties they all focused in on the tinnitus, and it really didn't matter what else was going in my life. All I could focus on was that ringing in my ears. That was at the forefront of my mind. And it was bizarre because there were other real things that I really did have to think about, but the tinnitus was there. Now, habituation tinnitus just means you can go back to worrying about that other stuff. Tinnitus isn't the thing that's at the front and center of your mind when you go to sleep. It's not the thing that's at the front and center of your mind when you wake up every morning. The rest of your life is. Whatever else it is you've got going on, whatever else is you're trying to achieve, or that you want in life, or that you want to think or stress or be happy or whatever about, you can. And I would say that there is no difference between my life now, habituated, and anybody else who's habituated for that matter, after they've habituated and before they got tinnitus. Now, that's not to say I'm not extra careful with my ears, because I am, and I'm very sensitive to it still. And I wouldn't say I have hyperacusis or noise sensitivity or anything like that. But I'm a little bit more aware that I need to look after my ears. I certainly don't want my tinnitus to get any louder or any worse. So I would say that is one meaningful change. There's a lesson I learned, basically. But I don't stress about it. I don't worry about it. It doesn't impact me negatively. Now, I know that you're just hearing this from me, and I'm one of the founders of Otto, so I've got plenty of vested interest, but you know, we've been going for a couple of years now. We've had tens of thousands of people coming through the app, and we've had hundreds of people come through our one-to-one therapy program. And they all say the same stuff about the habituation. So that's really how I consider habituation. Like I said, just to reinforce, it's that lack of a negative emotional reaction to tinnitus. It is possible, and it is a fantastic place to be. That is really what everybody with chronic tinnitus should aspire to achieve, and it's what we're here to help you do. So tinnitus without, so it took me a while, right? As I said earlier, it took me about 18 months to 2 years to habituate. And that's because I did it on my own. I didn't have any support from any of the medical community. I wasn't asking, I was scared to. And it is a difficult thing. And that's because tinnitus is a spiral, right? So as you stress or you become anxious about your tinnitus, you then start to struggle with your sleep. As you struggle with your sleep, you then start to feel more anxious and more stressed and so on. So it's very, very difficult to get yourself out of those habits. And that's where a lot of the techniques that we use at Otto come into play. So those are things like CBT and ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to stop talking there about habituation per se, or specifically, and just tell you a little bit about at Otto, what we're able to do and how it works, basically. So we basically have two things at Otto. One is a digital therapy program. So a lot of you have probably already experienced that already, and might know about the Otto app. And we've recently launched our one-to-one therapy program. So in January this year, the very start of January, we launched the one-to-one program, and that's really about pairing up people that might want that extra little bit of help, whether it's specific guidance around you might have a slightly more niche problem, things like hyperacusis, so noise sensitivity, misophonia, difficulty, maybe tinnitus on one ear, or maybe a kind of a tinnitus with an unusual sound. Not everybody experiences a ringing or a pulsing. There's lots of other stuff that can go on. We had a customer recently with musical tinnitus. So she had a song going round and round in her head, non-stop. So there are little things like that that putting in touch with the one-to-one therapist can be really helpful for. So that's what we can do, Otto. We pay you up with a therapist, and we get you started. So we normally base this around a 6-week program. So that's 2 sessions a month. So 6 sessions in the program, 2 sessions a month. So we expect most people to habituate within about 3 months. So that's what we're offering as part of the one-to-one therapy program. So there was a question I noticed earlier: how long does habituation take? That's more or less your answer to that. So Again, it took me about 18 months to 2 years. If you look at the scientific literature, so if you look at the kind of studies that people have done to see how long it normally takes people to habituate, they say 12 to 18 months. We aim for about 3 months. Now, we definitely can't promise that, but it's how the program's been designed. We're generally pretty successful with that. Clearly, it depends on what point you're at when you start, and kind of how far along you are on that journey already. But that's what we aim for, and that generally works out pretty well for us. So I'm gonna take a look at some questions, and so please feel free to start dropping them in the Q&A at the bottom. If there's anything I haven't mentioned or you'd like me to go over a little bit more, then please feel free. This will be recorded, and you guys will get emailed an opportunity to view the recording. I'm also going to leave my email at the end if you guys have any questions for me. You'll get an email after this with some links to the therapy program as well, and there'll be a discount code in there for 30% off your first session as well. So if you're interested in signing up, you'll be able to. I'd recommend you go through that link. So there's a few questions in chat, and there's a few questions in the actual Q&A thing. I'm afraid the chat is a bit too busy for me to scan through and read all the questions, especially as I'm on my own. I'm just going to prioritize the ones that are actually in the Q&A thing, and then once we're done there, I'll come back to the chat area. So we discussed how long does habituation take. So Sarah's asked, is it possible to habituate to all kinds of tinnitus? She said, I have multiple sounds, and some days it is worse than others, which makes it hard to get used to. Yeah, I think that's definitely an extra challenge. We have a lot of people that go through the one-to-one program specifically because of that. I'm not 100% sure without talking to you, but I would describe, especially if it's some days are a lot worse than others. Sometimes we call those spikes. And they are particularly tricky to habituate to, because you might find that you've kind of reached that point, you've habituated, you've got there. And then you have that spike, you have that bad day, and it just completely throws you off, and you feel like you've habituated and you haven't. Yeah, that's something that the therapists are very, very used to and are very good at helping out with. But the short answer to your question is yes, it's absolutely possible to habituate to all kinds of tinnitus. From one end of the spectrum of intrusiveness all the way to the other, all types of different sounds. So yeah, that's absolutely possible. So someone's asked if I struggle with tinnitus. I don't now. I certainly did, but I don't anymore. So Eric's asked an interesting question here. He's asked, I feel like I've started to habituate several times in the last 2 years, but it seems to just stop and go back to my usual volume. Nothing in your life changed drastically, trying to figure out how to keep it going. So I think this is, I guess, different to spikes. This is just tinnitus that fluctuates, right? And maybe you habituate, maybe it comes back. One of the big things we try and do with Otto is, first of all, that's normal, right? It's not just you. That's super normal. And even I have bad days. They're extremely rare, but they do happen. You need to fall back on those techniques. But we're very careful to provide you with resources and a roadmap for things to go back to and do when those days happen. So I guess all I would say is that, maybe you will have those bad days. Don't worry, everybody does. We'll do our absolute best to equip you and give you the tools and the resources you need to manage those bad days. So yeah, and do keep going, because you will get there and it will get better over time. Okay, there's a question here. Does tinnitus lead to Alzheimer's, dementia, or brain tumors? No, not to my knowledge, but it's been a while since I've done any real sort of medical research into tinnitus, but no, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Listen, just as a point here, everybody with tinnitus should have seen a medical professional at some point. Okay, it's 100% worth getting checked out. You never know what they're going to find and how they might be able to help you. So definitely don't diagnose yourself. Go and see a doctor first. It is like they might say it's tinnitus, you have to deal with it, in which case we're here. But just for everybody here, please go make sure that you have seen a doctor. So there's a question here about having mild tinnitus for a while and talking about tinnitus getting progressively worse. I think, well, one of the things is that in the Otto app, we have a noise meter now. So it's a little bit hard to find because we don't use it that often. But if you go to settings, there's a noise meter and you can use it to basically tell the volume of your environment. It will tell you if you're in an area where the volume is too loud and you need to be protecting your ears. As I alluded to earlier, I'm pretty careful with it. Whenever I'm out and about, if I know I'm somewhere noisy or loud or might damage my hearing, I know that it damaging my hearing could potentially make my tinnitus worse in time. And so I do my utmost to protect my ears, and I carry on my keyring, a little set of earplugs, which you can just see in this little packet here. So if I'm ever caught out, I've got some. But basically, I think if you do look after your ears, you look after your hearing, you don't have anything to stress and to worry about. Our hearing can get worse as we age, but it's a slow process, and it's a lot of the time it's because we're not looking after ears. So looking after your ears, use your hearing protection, you'll be okay. Can you habituate beyond 2 years? Yeah, absolutely. Again, one of the reasons we see people in the one-to-one program is because some people have struggled with the tinnitus for years and they just haven't been able to habituate on their own. Maybe they've got locked into certain thinking processes and pathways and kind of cognitive spirals. And actually those people are in a stage where it just doesn't matter how long you leave it. They need some help. They need some therapy, or they need some intervention from a tinnitus specialist to help them carry on that path to habituation. So there is definitely no time limit. And yeah, don't stress about that. We see plenty of people who have had tinnitus for a really long time, and we're still able to help them. Okay, so I'm going to answer this one very quickly. This will come up a lot. Have I heard of the new Linear system? Yes, I have. Look, if there was good evidence that Linear worked, we'd be selling it at Otto, and well, we'd probably all be out of a job, to be honest with you. I've got hopes for all of the research initiatives and things that are out there to try and help people with tinnitus. Linear may well be one in due course. As it stands at the moment, there isn't enough scientific evidence for me to say, as a doctor and one of the people at Otto, that I'm comfortable recommending it to you or to anyone else, especially at cost, to yourselves. So I have heard of it. Our latest therapist, Kira, used to work at Linear, and she led the therapy team there, and did a lot of the habituating and so on and so forth. And she, spoke very highly of Linear and was very positive about them. Her passion was in therapy, and she felt like that's where we could give people the most help. So yeah, but that's my kind of blanket answer to Linear. I hope it works, but at the moment, with the evidence they have, it's not good enough for me or anyone else at Otto. Kirsty's asking if I ever have a spike or flare up of tinnitus. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I don't always. It's rare that I have a negative reaction to it, but I definitely have occasions where I notice my tinnitus is worse. Like I said, it's actually a lot more common than you think. So let's have a look. I've got quite a few here, so I'm going to try and speed up. I've answered that one. Is it possible to habituate to all kinds? I've answered that one. Sorry, I'm just blasting through these so I can keep it organized. It won't take me a second. What if I have pulsatile tinnitus along with high-pitched ringing in one ear? I think I alluded to that earlier. It doesn't matter what your tinnitus sounds like, how bad it is, how loud it is, how long you've had it. It's not habituation is not to do with your tinnitus. It's not to do with how you perceive your tinnitus. It's to do with your emotional reaction. And in that sense, it really doesn't matter what your tinnitus is like. We can help. What percentage of people habituate to the point they don't hear the tinnitus unless tired or stressed? I think that's a really difficult one to answer. I don't have that information. We don't ask it. I would argue that's probably where I am now. I don't hear my tinnitus unless I'm really tired or stressed. And I think that's one, again, we're very careful not to tell anybody that we're going to make your tinnitus go away, or you're going to, it's going to drop in volume. But one of the obvious cycles that we know about tinnitus is that if you are anxious and you are stressed, that can make your perception of the tinnitus worse, and it can make your tinnitus seem louder. So it stands to reason, if we're able to reduce the stress and the anxiety and all the other negative emotions around tinnitus, then we can potentially, as a helpful side effect, reduce that perception and reduce the perceived volume of your tinnitus. But again, that's not the aim of the game here. It's not what we do. It's just a kind of nice little side effect sometimes. How do you know when you're fully habituated? Well, you won't be joining webinars like this. You won't be thinking about tinnitus. You won't be on the forums. You won't be on the Facebook groups. You won't be following the news for any of the research updates. Like I said, you just won't care, basically. You'll get on with your life as it normally was. And there will be a time when you wake up one day and a week has gone by or 2 weeks has gone by and you realize you just haven't thought about your tinnitus. You may have been aware of it, but it didn't stress you out. It didn't intrude your thoughts in any way. So there's a question here about the Levo system. I don't know what that is. I'm not sure if that's the linear system, but we don't have a system. We have a therapy program and therapists. So is it okay to mask tinnitus? Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. So there's no evidence there's pretty weak evidence that sound therapy and masking helps you to habituate. But I think used the right way, right, that it can be helpful and it might help you. Sometimes you just need to get to sleep and you don't, and you're in a very, very quiet room. My house is in the countryside and it's very, very quiet. So it can be helpful sometimes to have a little bit of a background noise, especially on some of the bad days. So no, it's not cheating. It can be a useful tool. It's certainly not the core of what we do, but it's potentially very useful. Liz asked, how do you lose the fear of tinnitus? Well, it takes time. It takes the right techniques. It takes the right approach, and it takes the right help. Exactly how you do it, well, that's what we're here for, and that's we've built a whole program around it. So I don't think I can answer that in a single question, other than to say it is possible, and it's actually a really important thing to aim for. Okay, Rosemary's asking, is it clinically proven that some medications can cause tinnitus? Yes, there are. I'm not going to give you a list now because I can't remember and it might be wrong. It's safe to say that there are some medications out there that we do know can cause tinnitus. I'm afraid you just have to ask your doctor for some more specifics on that one. So David's asking about when he goes to bed, the tinnitus comes back. I think tinnitus, that's variable. It's worth seeing a doctor. Actually, David, I can't give you advice that specific. So this person's asked, is listening to podcasts as good as listening to sounds? Yeah, I mean, if you've got to listen to something, for a long period of time, or to help you habituate, or whatever it is, I would certainly recommend podcasts, radio, music, TV. At the very least, it's more interesting. Another question here about linear. Again, you guys know my thoughts on that now. What I'm going to do, some of you got slightly more specific questions. So what I'm going to do is, Anna, I'm going to make you a co-host if I can. Promote to panelist. I know that you, so I'm just promoting Anna because what she can do is actually reply to some of your questions in the chat. Hi, Anna. Hello, I'm afraid we still can't hear you, but that's all right. And what I'm going to do, Anna, is see if I can make you a co-host. Here we go. Now you should be able to see the Q&A at the bottom. Now, do you want to, I'll keep talking and do the questions but you can type answers. So do you want to pick out any you like? And if you've asked any questions in your QA, you might be lucky enough to get a written answer from Anna. So someone's asked, is it possible to lose your emotions? Like those for enjoying music or watching movies as your brain starts reacting less to tinnitus? No, I don't think so. Anna's typing an answer to that one. So go on, Anna. Anna, I was thinking we could do them at the same time. So if you just want to pick any off and start typing answers, and we can come through and we'll work concurrently. Thumbs up, perfect. So Ronald's asked, is it uncommon to only have tinnitus on one side? No, super common. I used to see that all the time in the military, especially. So if you have your rifle up, then you get damage in the ear that's facing the chamber. So yeah, no, it's super common to have tinnitus on one side. My tinnitus is both sides. I'm and as so's Anna's. I don't really know what it'd be like to have tinnitus on one side. I almost struggle to see. I imagine very difficult though. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. So Kirsty's asking if we've got any recommendations for earplugs. I heard loop earplugs are good. Well, do you know what, Kirsty? These are the ones I've got here. These are loops. I like them because they came in a little what's it called? The little carrying case, and they look kind of cool as well because they've got this like golden ring on the outside. It makes it obvious you're wearing earplugs, and I quite like doing that. I feel like it's a good bit of promo to the community at large that people should be protecting your ears. So I like to make a point of wearing them and showing people that I am wearing them. So yeah, I like loop earplugs. I'd say that the best earplug is whichever one is the convenient for you and fits you the best and offers adequate hearing protection. So just be careful where you're buying them, but as long as you're buying them from somewhere sensible, then you should be fine. I think the questions are coming in faster than I can answer them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up until about 25 minutes past. Like I said, Anna, if you're able to type answers to and just rattle through, I think they go into the answered Q&A section, so people will be able to read those. And I'm going to keep going through. So somebody said here, when I need to focus and my tinnitus seems louder, I really find the sounds and masking tools on the app helpful. I'm sure it's better to balance those with habituation techniques. Can they become kind of a crutch? I think if it really helps you to do what you need to do in life to habituate and get to that next step, it doesn't matter if they're a crutch. It's not a particularly unhealthy one. As long as you're listening to the right stuff and the right volume, then in my view, that's okay. You know, some people turn to alcohol or smoking or, you know, all sorts of unhealthy coping mechanisms and techniques. So I would hope that in time we can habituate you and get you to the point where you don't need those sounds. But you know, I don't think anybody should be forcing themselves to do without it. In my experience, it just happens naturally. You don't feel the need to use the sounds anymore. You can be aware of your tinnitus, you can perceive it, and you don't necessarily struggle. So don't go massively against the grain. Don't force yourself to avoid these things if they help. Like I said, there's plenty of less healthy coping mechanisms out there. Anna, there's a question here from Jennifer about hearing aids. I'll leave that one to you. Talking about hearing aids that need Wi-Fi, so it's probably not relevant to the group at large. It's about halfway down. It's posted at 9 o'clock from Jennifer. So I don't know if you're happy to type an answer to that. But if you can find it, that might be a good one for you. So somebody's asked here, how is it not exhausting for our brains to continuously produce that noise? Why wouldn't it fix itself like the rest of our body often does? Can't get my head around this. Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's a totally understandable frustration. It's amazing what the body can heal from, and the sort of things that it can adapt to and adjust to. And so to find that, this what seems like a simple thing, that the body can't fix is super frustrating. I can't really say around any more than that. I agree with you. But that frustration has gone further and further away from the front of my mind, as I've become more and more habituated. So yeah, try not to be too frustrated with it. Where are we? Let's have a look. With sound therapy, do you have to listen to it for hours per day? No. Anna's voraciously shaking her head. Absolutely not. Anna, do you want to try unmuting yourself one more time? I can see that your thing's muted. Do you want to just unmute and just say hello? And
Hello.
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. There we are.
It's a miracle.
I can't believe it. With 10 minutes left, you've come back.
Oh,
I
oh,
know you let
oh.
me do all the hard work, and you
I
come in.
know, I know. Well, you are the founder and I'm just the therapist, so you need
Yeah.
to be doing the work. Um, yes, sorry. Quickly, I was just typing to somebody very badly, very slowly. Hearing aids are often the first point of recourse for people with tinnitus because 80% of people with tinnitus will have a hearing loss. So therefore, if we support the hearing loss, you'll get more sound in, which means you'll notice your tinnitus less, obviously, until you take your hearing aids out at bedtime. You have hearing aids that have a masking noise that duplicate the hiss. There are a number of hearing aids that have a sound generator program in them, and they do a variety of things. Sound therapy is a very complicated and very long answer, and I probably don't have time to do that now, but I'm quite happy if you want to drop notes in there to send you a longer a more precise and concise response. But yes, sound therapy in hearing aids is a thing. For some people, it's very much worth it. It can be a white noise, so a hissy noise, or a fractal noise, depending on the manufacturer that you use. And they have benefits and they have deficits. It's about how you use it, really, which is the same problem that I was shaking my head briefly about earlier, in that sound therapy is therapy, so it should be part of an overall program of support. Just having a loud noise in your ears doesn't help you habituate to your tinnitus. It just gives you a loud noise in your ear, so it can give you another noise to listen to, which can be more complicating and more tiring. And we've got a more complicated situation going on, so it can take longer to get used to dealing with the response to your tinnitus, because you've got another noise going on, which can also, because of the type of noise, engender an automatic fear response.
Anna, Liz has asked, does the anxiety, insomnia, tinnitus cycle eventually pass? I've had tinnitus for 4 months and it's been a real struggle.
Yeah. It will pass eventually. Eventually, even the most extreme situations, people will feel less terrible than they did in the beginning. The point of habituation process, and it's a process, not an event, so you don't wake up one morning and go, oh, it's not. It happens very gradually, that you'll notice that you're not noticing. It's yeah, it's the fear and the anxiety and the stress that comes with it if we can deal with those emotions and help the emotional response to those things, that helps us cope better, and then we respond less and less to the tinnitus, so we don't notice it over time. So yes, over time, but there's no fixed. I mean, everybody is focused on, oh, it should be 8 months, it should be 18 months, it should be 24 months. It's about you. It's about how much work you've done with yourself to deal with some of those emotions, and that's why we do cognitive therapies, is to learn how to respond and recognize those responses that we have. And then once we can deal with those emotional responses and recognize them and cope better with our tinnitus, we hear it less, we become less stressed, we are more relaxed and happier. And then tinnitus sort of moves away from the center of our attention into something that's just at the side and then further and further away.
Oh, sorry, I was muted there. So Susan's asked about the price in the program. Do you want to let people know, talk about the program, Anna, and then
Yeah.
that will sort of lead us to kind of wind down, I think, over the next
Yeah.
5 minutes. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk about exactly what it is we offer in the one-to-one program, and then I'll let you guys know the price and everything at the end, and we'll get some links and stuff sent out for
Yeah.
everybody to sign up.
Of course. So what we're offering in the one-to-one therapy is um, an opportunity to spend time with a specialist who really understands tinnitus, who they may have tinnitus, they may have worked with people with tinnitus for quite a long time and have a real understanding of what you're talking about. They're not going to be people that go, oh yeah, it's okay, just get on with it. They're really going to understand what you're going through. They're going to understand about sleep. They're going to understand about the stress that it causes. They're going to understand how angry and frustrated it makes you. And they will talk to you, they will listen to you, they will find where you are. We work from a very person-centered perspective, so we don't have a program that one size fits all. We have a very much a person-centered, so whatever you come with your coping skills, you've got to this age, you've coped with stuff that's happened before, so you've got coping skills. So it's about finding those, finding how we can relate those to tinnitus, and giving you some hints and tips and ways that we know work, because all of our therapy, all of our support is all evidence based, through research, but also through my 40 years of experience working with people with tinnitus and having tinnitus and doing all those things. So it's a combination of all of that, and you'll get that support to help you find your own way in your own time through to your stage of habituation, so that it's not a one size fits all. It's very much an individual program. And it's been proven to be, well, I've been doing this for a while, as I've just said, but with Otto, one-to-one therapy was something that we've added on top of the app, because we found that people were asking for more additional and one-to-one support, and it's certainly proved to be remarkable. I was working with a lady a couple of weeks ago, and when I first started working with her, she'd spent 18 months sitting in a darkened room because she had very severe tinnitus and sensitivity to sound and sensitivity to light and vestibular migraines, which are like balance migraines. So she sat in a darkened room for 18 months. And then when I spoke to her 2 Thursdays ago, she had the window open and she'd been outside only for a little while, but she'd been outside and she'd done that work in 3 months. And so from 18 months of sitting in a dark room to 3 months of therapy to having the windows open and having some sound around her. I was very emotional. It was fantastic, and she'd done so much work. I'm not saying that we're miracle workers by any stretch of the imagination, but we can help. And even everybody comes to me and says, "You've never seen anybody with tinnitus as bad as mine." And I say, okay. And they tell me about the tinnitus and say, okay, well, my tinnitus is a really, really loud noise that sounds like a dial up tone. And it's there all the bleeding time. and it's really intrusive when I attend to it. Um, so it's not a competition. It's not I've got the worse tinnitus than you, but it's that we can help, and we can work with you to help you work out how to deal with it better, and how to get your life back, which is the really important thing. And really what George was talking about getting his life back and getting on with stuff that was real and important, rather than focusing on your tinnitus all the time. And I
Thanks.
did warn you about me talking, didn't I?
No. Thank you. Well, I mean, I've been giving it the gab for a long time, so it's nice to give my voice a rest. Um, So just to follow up on that, so I've posted in the chat, hopefully to everybody. Yes, I have. So a link to sign up and the pricing. So it depends where you are. We do have conversion rates for most currencies. It's £249 a month, or it's $319 per month. It might be slightly cheaper than that in the US. It depends on the conversion rate. So in terms of how many months, well, that's down to you and the therapist. Like I said, we kind of plan for 3 months. That's largely how we've built the course and the syllabus, and roughly how long we expect most people to spend with us. But there's no commitment, there's no contract. If you find that you've habituated sooner, then fantastic. Similarly, some people that are kind of recent graduates. Remember, we only started in January, but some people are choosing to stay on, maybe at a lower, having less sessions, really because they find it so helpful, or because there's other stuff they want to discuss, and there's other things. So we're pretty flexible with it. But generally speaking, we expect around 3 months of therapy for each of you. Quite a big time difference. How does that work? Diane said, yeah, we just try and make it work, Diane. All of our therapists are based in the UK. But thankfully they're all great at shifting their calendars around and making it work. So when you sign up, we put you in touch with a coordinator, basically, who can work with you and the therapist to just find a time in your calendar that works for you. So generally speaking, we can accommodate most time zones. And like I said, we do have people with us that are in Australia and New Zealand, so we make it work for them.
I've had 8 o'clock in the morning calls and things, which is,
Yeah,
you know,
nice early morning. And
yeah.
how long are each sessions, Anna? What's your
45 minutes. We split the sessions into sort of 45-minute sessions, which gives us enough time to review where you are. You work on that particular topic that we're dealing with, and then wrap up, make sure that you recognize the plan for the week or 2 weeks in between your next session, and then sort of do the sort of booking for the next session. We always have work for you to do at home in between time, so it's not just a one session thing. It's something that you need to work on in between seeing your therapist, because it's not just for, the session is not just for me. I can witter on for England, but it's not just for me. It's for you to do the work. So there are exercises, there are particular pieces of work that you will go off and do, and then come back and tell us how you got on, and then we'll build on the next element. So it's around 45 minutes, which goes really quickly, but actually is quite a long time for somebody to concentrate as well. So we get that balance.
Brilliant? And I think last question, Anna, because it's been a long day for everyone, and a long webinar. Well, I'll jump very quickly. Diane's asked, is this an app? No, the therapy program, the link I've just provided, everything we're talking about right now is a course. It's a program with the therapist. These are live Zoom sessions like you're having now. So you'll be talking with your therapist, just one-on-one, with the therapist that you're partnered with. So it's supported by an app. We do use the app to help provide you with things and techniques and exercises and sounds and so on in between the sessions. But the one-to-one therapy program is really about that relationship and that connection with you and the therapist, and that journey. But yeah, Anna, just to finish, James has asked, can you give an idea of what the first session would cover broadly?
Yeah, of course. So the first session is always that introduction to you. So we will have quite a lot of information before we see you. So you'll do an habituation quiz, which will tell us where you are. We'll do a readiness for counselling quiz, so we'll get an idea of the type of person that you are from a quiz. But you know, and then we'll sit with you and we'll just talk about where you are, how you're feeling about your tinnitus, how it impacts on your life, and where the main sort of issues that you want to work on to start with are. And then you and your therapist will come up with a plan on which sessions to work on. Always in the first session, we talk about breath work, breathing. And I know this sounds silly, but breathing is really important. And it's not just the breathing that we've done since we were born. It's about conscious breathing. It's about controlling the breath. When we're anxious, we breathe shallowly and fast. When we're relaxed, we breathe slower and calmer. And that exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen changes the biochemicals in our brain, which can calm us down. So breath work is really important. So we'll do breath work and we'll talk about the importance of breath work, and we'll do some exercises, and we'll do journaling. And the reason that we do journaling is a way for you to track your journey and to track your successes. Because when you're in the middle of a storm, it's really hard to see the edges. It's really hard to see good days when you're having a bad day. So you need that to remind you, but also that when you are having a bad day, to remember that you had a bad day a couple of weeks ago and it was okay and you got through it, and you'll get through this one. And so we use journaling. So the first session will be breath work and journaling, and then any particular piece of work that you bring. So it might be sleep, it might be anxiety, it might be changing the language that you use about your tinnitus. We always talk about people having tinnitus and experiencing tinnitus. We don't say suffering. People suffer from poverty, they suffer from ignorance. We have tinnitus. Okay. It's about the language that we use and ownership of that language and agency.